James, you've been following along. Tell me what you think so far.
Well, you've spent all of your life basically working in professional radio. You know what it sounds like when someone needs to tap dance because they have nothing to say. This guy has been tap dancing for the last half hour, and there's a very good reason he's got nothing to say. The news today will not be, as much as King Trump would like to think so, the announcement that he's making right now. The news will be this evening in the U.S. Senate when they vote to short-circuit his state of emergency, and in doing so, short-circuit the tariffs against Canada. This is going on as we speak. One of Tim Kaine is a Democratic senator who is trying to push this through. He claims he has the votes from and some Republicans to put it through, one of them being Rand Paul of Kentucky, the other one being Mitch McConnell, a name we've heard of in the past in connection with the Trump administration. If that happens, all of a sudden that knocks out the bottom tier of cards of the entire, how can I put it, sort of administrative Ponzi scheme that Trump has been running since January 20th, threatening these tariffs. If he has no legal grounds to do so, if the Senate is saying there is no state of emergency, you've made this up, and you don't have the power to impose these tariffs, and the bill, by the way, specifically targets Canada. It's going to be a very interesting Thursday morning for Donald Trump if he wakes up and discovers, you can't hit Canada with tariffs. However, all this stuff, I guess, with Mexico will still be going on. I'm hearing a great deal, far more than I expected to, about how nasty the Vietnamese and people in Thailand are about making motorcycles, Aaron. But this guy has been blowing smoke for half an hour because in the end, he does not have a punchline. In the end, he knows he's going to have to wait and see what happens tonight, because if this goes through in the Senate, he's going to have, he likes to think it, he is not a king. He cannot impose tariffs legally on Canada with this vote in the Senate if it goes against them tonight.
All right, I'm just watching markets because the Standard & Poor's, they have an after-hours market. Yeah. The market's down about 2% right now, just based on what he's already said, which is fairly significant. I just want to understand, because we haven't talked a lot about this, Jim, but this idea, people will remember back, fentanyl was the excuse being used to declare that state of, he called it, national emergency, why he could impose these tariffs, right? So now there's, of course, a challenge to this, but they will need some Republicans to be able to push this through, will they not?
That's right. And as of now, Senator Kaine says he has the necessary 4 Republican votes to push this through in the Senate. The vote is tonight. Now, he claims he has been told by these Republicans, and we all know, I'm sorry to say it this way, we all know what an American Republican's word is worth. But that said, if this goes through tonight, the props just got knocked out from Donald Trump's entire strategy of tariffs, because if Canada goes, well, I don't see how the rest of the House can be maintained.
That's my question. Is this specifically, as you understand it, Jim, related to just Canada? Because that's where this fentanyl... Well, then again, Canada. Mexico is on that list.
Mexico is on the list, but this particular bill that is being voted on this evening, as far as I can tell from all the reports I've seen, is for Canada alone. It is based on complaints from constituents in U.S. states to their senators saying this is killing us. And that's where we are right now. There is no other mention of other countries being involved in this. But like I say, if Canada falls out of this, I don't see how any of this can proceed, how any of this really out to lunch, completely improvised trade war, courtesy of no one else other than Donald Trump, can be continued. And anyone who listens to the show knows perfectly well, we have learned after God knows how many interviews you've done, there's no such thing as an American car or a Canadian car. There are North American cars. The process of construction is so embedded into installations in Mexico, the U.S., and Canada that you can't say where one end starts and the other finishes. So for him to turn around and talk about automobile tariffs, if it goes, I could see overseas, but if it's going to affect what's happening in Canada and in Mexico, I don't see how that's going to work. But as I say, to a certain extent, everything that we've heard thus far may well be moot by 9 o'clock tonight, depending on how this vote goes. But this is it. like, I know the fanboys are probably already texting you about the art of the deal, the Trump fanboys, but the fact of the matter is, sooner or later, the grift falls apart, and it looks like it may fall apart this evening.
So I'm going to tell you, just looking at this chart that Donald Trump was holding out and saying that, this is what countries charge us, here's what, and we're going to charge them. I can see 25 countries on this list. Among them, no Canada and no Mexico.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't that interesting? Because again, if the idea is that fentanyl is being used as the bogus reason to create what he called the national emergency, that decision alone was always about just Mexico and Canada, which, if this thing passes, I'd imagine would remove them from the list because we're the two countries, the ones pointed out by Trump, not controlling our borders as far as fentanyl was concerned.
The other thing, and like, listen, buddy, you're the expert when it comes to the va-et-vient of business. I'm just a yokel, but I noticed this morning, even though the markets were really slow and sometimes really choking in anticipation of this afternoon, they took off. A lot of value that was lost this morning was more than regained this afternoon. So there may be word out there somewhere saying, you know what, by this time tomorrow, this is not going to be an issue. Once again, it all turns on this vote. Once again, do I really want to mortgage the farm against the word of a Republican? We'll see what happens. But to me, I'd be very surprised if, and listen, you're doing a great job this afternoon. And I hate to say it this way, Aaron, but better you than me because I'd be tearing my hair out. But the thing is, I'd be very surprised if you hear about Canada and or Mexico this afternoon.
Let me just say one other thing, Jim, so people can, or if they're just tuning in, I can recap. Again, the only thing, and he mentioned it fairly early, I guess, in his speech, which I believe is still going on, by the way.
Yeah.
At some point, he'll take questions, I guess, and we'll go back to it. But he mentioned the 25% as far as auto tariffs were concerned. That's it. And again, to your point, and I brought this up, that's on imported cars. It would seem to me that means if you're Japan, South Korea, Germany, that's you. I'm not sure that Canada is on that list, but again, maybe we find out later. Maybe the details are there. So outside of that, the only thing that I can say we've seen so far, it seems to me anyway, is this sort of baseline 10% tariff across the board, right? Mm-hmm. For everybody. And depending on what country you happen to be in, it could be more, but it's a baseline 10% for everyone.
Yeah, so in other words, the promised mountain will prove to be a molehill by the time the smoke is cleared.
All right. Jim, thank you very much. Appreciate you hanging around.